and welcome back to Sweet Slow Sunday. My name is Jess. I hope that you're all having the most beautiful, magical week, day, couple of days, couple of hours. And if you're not, I hope that you find what you need, whether that's with me or after you leave here. We are going to slow down together. We are going to use poetry to do that. And we are going to take this moment to connect to ourselves, to our breath, to our bodies, to the way that we are experiencing this moment. So today I'm going to start with two poems. The first is an original that I wrote last year. So I'm going to go ahead. It doesn't have a title, but I'm going to go ahead and start anyway. Most often, I am leaping, no, jumping, no, diving headfirst into nothing. Or so it seems. A black pit, a hole in a tree, a cave carved out in the mountain. I hear them scream from behind their front doors. Their bedroom windows sat still with moving clocks gathering dust. As I howl and ask to be eaten alive by the unknown. I can't pretend I don't cry. I can't pretend my ribs don't ache with anxiety, with nightmare recollections of objects as sharp as the most hidden nails hiding behind this flesh, holding the love together. What a breath it is to know the unknown is unknown only because I simply don't know what it knows yet. Until it becomes all too familiar, and I go looking for nothing in particular. So that's the first piece. And you know what? I think I will end today with the second poem. So I want to talk to you today a bit about the foundational piece of poetry. And this is because not only are we going to be listening to poetry and experiencing poetry as it's spoken aloud here in this space as a way of slowing down and connecting to the moment, but it's also something that I'm going to share with you how to incorporate into your life, how to use poetry as a modality, whether you are listening to it or reading it, or if you're going to begin to pick up the pen or the pencil, or even use your notes app on your phone, whatever it is that you're doing, to write your own pieces. So maybe you've been writing for a long time. Maybe you've been writing for a little while now. Maybe you haven't written anything since you were a kid. Maybe you haven't written anything at all. No matter where you fall in this space, it is totally fine, totally okay. Poetry is not this thing that is exclusive. It's not this thing that is placed on a pedestal, though sometimes they do this in academia. And I can tell you that because I have taken that journey through academics, and sometimes it feels like poetry is this like barred off landscape that we can't quite access unless we have permission. So I'm here to tell you that if you can experience your life, you can do poetry. That if you have been experiencing your life, you have been doing poetry, you just haven't been writing it down. So that is because the key component and most foundational piece to poetry, to writing it, to reading it, is the art of noticing. So that is the most crucial aspect of poetry, noticing. So you don't need to be writing some elaborate, abstract piece about like a huge topic like love or grief or one of those big, big things that we don't have all the answers to. But what you can start to do is to capture your experiences, capture the moments that you are present inside of. And what happens when we start to do this time and time again is that those big things like love and like grief and all of the things held in between, that the more that we capture the small experiences, the smaller moments, that what we typically tend to think are these mundane things, but once you start to capture these things over and over and over again and have a place where you can witness them on the page, for example, the more that we start to see that those tiny little mundane things actually add up to be the big things, the really big things. And so poetry is this act of noticing, observing. One of the things that I like to ask myself when I'm writing a poem, if I don't have that natural inspiration in the moment, because I do like to write every single day, right? Because writing is a muscle. Writing is something that we do repeatedly. And the more that we show up to it, the more we seem to have to write about. But when I feel like maybe I'm not finding that inspiration naturally, or I'm not being drawn to the page because something else is pulling me forward to it, I like to ask myself, what is the truest thing that I can write right now? What is the truest thing? Whether that's noticing what's happening on the inside of me, right? Or noticing what's happening external to me. And one of the great ways that we can begin this process is to use all of our senses to say, okay, in this moment, what am I seeing? In this moment, what can I touch? In this moment, what do I smell? In this moment, what do I taste? In this moment, what do I hear? And simply using the five senses to anchor us into the present moment and to write it down. And that's the other key thing, write it down. And I know I mentioned something about using our notes app to capture the poem, and I like to do this too myself. But what I'm going to recommend is that we get into the habit of using our hand and using a pen or a piece of a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, because our hands are energetically connected to the heart space. And so I like to call this process, right, just writing, but I also like to call this process moving from heart to hand. And we do that because it slows down our expression, right? It's easy and accessible to be able to go to our phone and to capture something in that way, or to even use our voice memos. That's another way I like to capture poetry. But it's another to slow down and to actually take the time to write something out. Notice the way that the pen moves across the page. Notice the way our hand glides across the page. Notice the way our handwriting looks and the loops in our handwriting. Noticing every little moment of capturing our expression. One of the things I also like to notice when I do this is that, how I start off with an empty space and how my hand is filling up this space with all of what's inside of me. And finally, I get to see what's happening inside of me on the outside of me. And that is a great, great tool to slow down intentionally and to use poetry to do that. So start to notice, use your senses to anchor in, use this little practice, try it out. I would try it out once a day at least. But if you find yourself having a little bit of a moment, maybe you're in the car, maybe you're cooking dinner, maybe you are just waking up to the day and getting your day started, you can add this into your little routine. Maybe you have a meeting that you're going to, or something big that you have to go to, and you're trying to reconnect to your body so that you're very present with yourself. This is a great tool to use to start to get into that practice. So I'm going to end today with another poem. This one is from the collection called Second Blush by Molly Peacock. and this one is called Confession. I confess to my husband all my little sins. I was mean. I was petty. This happened. That happened. You had to do it, he says, or else he confounds me, asking his questions, all I'd never thought of. Why is it a poem to confess to one's husband? Am I that mere thing, a confessional poet? My confessions are artless because they are desperate, but the poem shines like a heart exposed. I haven't bothered to tell you my sins. You are not my husband. Thank God, you say. You're my reader. But have you ever read a poem where a husband is a confessor? Not veiled in a booth, but a seeker after truth. Not in a collar, but in his sweatpants, unshaven, tousled. Not much to you, reader, but to me, shining like a leaf in the after-rain sun, beaded with a jewel that's merely a water drop. And that's it. I hope you have a beautiful week ahead of you, and I will see you next Sunday.